Welcome to Cybersecurity Where You Are, the Center for Internet Security's podcast. I'm Sean Atkinson, CISO at CIS.
And I'm Tony Sager, Senior Vice President and Chief Evangelist at CIS. Cybersecurity affects us all, whether we're online at home, managing a company, supporting clients, or running a state or local government.
So join us on Wednesdays as we discuss trends and threats, explore security best practices, and interview experts in the industry.
Together, we'll clarify these issues, creating confidence in the connected world.
Hello and welcome to the show, Cybersecurity Where You Are. I'm Sean Atkinson, CISO here at the Center for Internet Security, joined by Chris Smith, social media specialist. Sir, how are you?
Doing well today. Thanks for having me.
Wonderful. Chris, we're talking about donation scams. It was a topic that you had brought up. Well, why is it so important that we talk about donation scams and why they're so prevalent?
Yeah, I think donation scams in today's world is something, it's always been there, right? But as the world continues to be more digital, right? Donation scams just seem something that I continue to come across. In my previous work, I was a nonprofit founder for many, many years. And so I was always educated on donation scams and always understood that those happen. And, we were trained and taught how to avoid those as an organization, but also personally. And definitely, during the time that we're in now, with so many natural disasters happening around us, which is just so unfortunate. And, my heart, and I'm sure your heart and our hearts go out to, all those affected by the hurricanes over the past month. And while I was on social media, as a social media specialist and expert, I would say, I came across a couple of scams and, I thought it was interesting. And so I pitched it to the team. Maybe this is something we should discuss. This is something we should talk about and make our viewers aware of.
Oh, absolutely. No, and it was a great idea. And we jumped on top of it because, as you mentioned, there are few predicators, as it were, into this. So major disasters we've been through, we've seen two massive hurricanes hit Florida in the south. And it's these types of opportunities that those that would purvey such scams make use of, right? We're looking at the generosity. We're looking at the fact that there are indicators where there is heartfelt need to reach out and do something to contribute. And in a lot of ways, donation is one of the things that we can do, right? Even we can't help physically or we can't be there, in person, we can help contribute to that. And it's where we see fake charities, impersonation of real organizations, even fake organizations just being stood up in order to execute this respectfully online. And I think that's one of the big elements, Chris, is the online element in the space. It's just makes it easy. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I think it's definitely, it makes it easy. There's so many, it's so easy to actually, create an X account or a Facebook account or sometimes maybe even a GoFundMe account or something like that in the midst of this. And really what I would say, prey on individuals that are in a space mentally where, and heart, right, that they want to give and act right away and make their donation be used right then and there, right, and to go towards help. And it's in those times and situations that maybe sometimes individuals and like myself, we don't do all the necessary checks that we possibly should do to make sure that we are given to an organization that's actually not only going to use those funds, but are actually in a legit organization or even a person maybe raising funds on the behalf of other individuals or an organization, right? And so that's definitely something that, we should talk about and examine is, how can this be prevented?
Absolutely. And I think it becomes, the way I'll frame it, Chris, is this is a great awareness element, right? When we see, and Chris, I'm going to extend this to the holiday season as well. Right, another time for giving. Obviously, holiday seasons hit. It opens up generosity, and that is used necessarily to profit those that with nefarious intent. Let me put it that way, and we'll leave it there. But takes us to another level where we need to understand and provide, I think in terms of this podcast is these are the examples and here's what you can do, right? Because Chris, you mentioned that you've seen some real world elements of this, both in your rich history and work experience, as well as, as social media specialist here at CIS. Is that right?
Yeah, and that's totally right. And then just being completely transparent, I know we discussed this as a team, and when I brought this to the team, it was on my heart because I had recently fell victim to a donation scam on the platform X, formerly known as Twitter. I'm located in North Carolina, and unfortunately, Hurricane Helene came through the western part of the state, and as many people know and have seen on TV or through social media platforms, or maybe even heard through individuals that they know and family, so much devastation occurred in Western North Carolina. I mean, completely towns devastated possibly for generations to come. And, for example, like my neighbor, right? And he has a box truck and just raising donations and funds and things like that to fill up that box truck and take to Western North Carolina. And, I have a personal, X account, and that's really tied in specifically to a specific university here in North Carolina that's completely centered around the sports, and because I'm a big sports guy, right? And so what I had saw was somebody that I follow on a regular basis that hosts a podcast. That's a fan account that hosts a pretty good podcast that showcases the sports and everything at the university. Was raising funds on behalf of his mother, and because they were located in Western North Carolina, and the tweet, I guess you could say, said, "Hey, our house has no power, but it's coming back on slowly. We have a generator going, so we're able to provide hot meals and get our power going in certain situations like that." I'm not sure all the ins and outs of that. But and they said in that tweet as well that their neighboring community was not so lucky, so they were taking in their friends and their families into their house, and they had access to nothing, right? Mostly to their funds, because the natural disaster was so large and devastating that the banks weren't open. They were operating on a cash system, right? And in today's world, a lot of people don't carry cash, and so they put out a message like, "Hey, this is what we're specifically looking for. These types of food, these types of materials. We're going to be at this spot at this time, this day," and all those times. And I've gone to the mountains multiple times, right? As vacationing there and spending time there 2, 3, 4 times almost every year with my family. And so I was very aware of these areas, right, that he was mentioning on this account. And, but, I couldn't make that trip, right? Because we were told basically, but, stay away from the mountains during this time. Only emergency personnel needs to be up there because we're not sure how safe the roads are, things like that. And so they said that they had a PayPal, Venmo. And so this was like 2 days after, right, all this had occurred. And so, my heart was like, I wanted to give right then and there. And so I said, "Hey, I have PayPal, Venmo." I tweeted back, and they sent it out, right? And boom, done that quick, right? And sent out a certain amount of money. Thank goodness at that time it wasn't a large amount of money. And then I just went around. I just went on my day, right? But what I think is important that people that's part of this story is that this person. Which eventually, as I'm sure all you can start to learn here and throughout the story, this was a scam artist. The profile picture was the same. The bio was the same. Follower count, I'm not sure how they completely pulled all this off. Tweets, all that kind of stuff was specifically the same. The only thing, after going back and researching a little bit, was that the only thing that was different was the handle, which is like, at, let's just say like mine is at Chris Smith, right? Theirs was just different than the account that that person had impersonated. And then somebody messaged me and was like, "Hey, I think you just got scammed. I was trying to message you through all this, And so, but it was too late for me, right? And so that's kind of how it happened. And unfortunately, it did happen. And I brought this to the team because I wanted the team, to say, hey, maybe we should make other people aware of this, because someone like me, right, that's on social media all the time, sees this stuff. If I can fall victim to it again, or not again, but if someone like me that is aware of this, works for a cybersecurity nonprofit, then the other individuals definitely can fall victim to this as well. So I think it's important to raise awareness about it.
No, absolutely. And thank you, for sharing that story, because it is important. So we want to look at some of the tactics that we use necessarily in this, right? So we had the impersonation of a respected account, link, fraudulent link on social media. Everything looks the same. It's one handle. That is, in a lot of cases, of course, it's not the easiest thing to see. You look, you see the picture, you see the bio. This is reputable. This is someone who I've talked to, who I've interacted with in the past. Again, one of the other elements here is and in this case, the high pressure tactics. Now, we've seen impersonation and donation from representative, could be the CEO, and saying, got to do this immediately. We've got to get this out. Send me, all the numbers off of these gift cards. Go buy me $500 worth of gift cards. And well, that's strange. That's not necessarily something that would be asked for. But now I'll provide a link. I'll provide a QR code. Click this, donate. And then it's, like you say, Chris, based on what you'd seen, it was that quick. And, others were trying to be responsible, trying to get in contact. But given the velocity in this case, it's very difficult once that's out of the bag to kind of rein it back in, because it is so convenient, right? Just to set up a Venmo or anything along those lines, those same technologies, very, very easy to transfer funds. And then, it's a shame that we have impersonation and it be so easy. Right. But I could take that same image, throw it up, take the same bio, right? It's all, necessarily public. And again, create a very similar account. And obviously it was highly charged for you, right? Emotionally, you wanted to contribute. You wanted to help as best you could. You couldn't get out there. You were told not to. How else can I help? The western part of your state, right? And you did. And it just ends up that it was, an impersonation attack and donation scams. And it's so, it's kind of the world we live in, Chris, is where we see these major disasters, people that actually need your donation, your support, right? Your prayers and thoughts and all of these elements. And ultimately, then you see this. And it, in some cases, I don't think in your case, Chris, but this would be the once bitten, twice shy type of approach. Well, I'm never donating again, right? I got tricked once, I could get tricked again. But I think what we want to provide today is advice, right? It is that it's not everything is bad that you see. Not every link is going to be bad. But if you follow certain rules. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, totally. I think, as someone, if you're on social media, right, I just think it's important to pay attention before you donate. Just don't fly blind into it, kind of like I did, but I think, Sean, you laid it out very beautifully there, that yes, when your heart's engaged, right? I mean, like, for example, the area, some of the areas that are completely just wiped off the face of the map, I was just there 7 months ago, right? And seeing, all these pictures, and then seeing the opportunity, right, to be able to give right then and there. I felt like it was going to a person's family that I knew. But taking a step back, I think there are things, as individuals, when we're on social media and we're about to maybe make a donation online, and it's being solicited through maybe X or Facebook or Instagram. There are some things that we can pay attention to, right? Ask specifically, in this case, this was not going to an organization, it was going to an individual, right? But say if it's going to an individual, ask for the link, right? If you're looking at making a large sum donation, maybe contact the organization first, saying, hey, this individual is raising funds for you. Does that check out? right? Making sure, like in my example, that the Twitter handle or the X handle, excuse me, lines up, right? Because that was the only thing that was different for me, that the profile picture matches the same. The same amount of tweets on each account, right? You can always see how many tweets somebody has sent out, whether it's 100 or 200, that those line up as well. And so, those are some things that you can look out for if you're going to be making a donation in a situation or a time like that.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. Let me just go through some examples really quickly, and then we can look at how these donation scams necessarily are communicated. So in some cases, it could be a fake charity website, right? So a website almost identical. In fact, identical. They just pull the code and create the same infrastructure. It's just a different URL with certain changes, certain links that they may put into a phishing email. So not only am I going to create an email that's fake, but behind it, the link that I include is also to a fake website. And again, this is, in today's day and age, and Chris, representatively, I'd say this is trivial for someone to put this together, unfortunately, where you can have company logos, mission statements, testimonials, everything looking exactly the same. Everything looks legitimate. Again, it's going to that point where Chris had mentioned, clicking links in emails or clicking links in social media posts. Let's go to the actual website. Let's not use that link as reference. So instead of being a charity, let me go to www.charity.org, whatever the URL happens to be, and go to the official site versus being a referral from an email or from social media. We also, Chris, one of the other things that I believe is prevalent is crowdfunding, right? The GoFundMes and utilizing certain conditions, people, events, fake, individuals and organizations establishing GoFundMe pages that are then again utilized as part of a scamming type activity. So those are, the four main donation scams that I'm aware of, Chris. Anything else there we want to add until we get into the advice?
Yeah, I think, GoFundMe has, over the past years has done a really good job. I think personally from, avoiding these and cutting down on these, because definitely in the early days, there's probably more of an increase in that because there wasn't as much checks and balances. But, even now, like through Hurricane Helene and Milton and things like that, natural disasters like that, they actually have checks and balances now where, if you're an individual looking to raise funds, right, you have to submit, through GoFundMe, and there's a checks and balances that takes place behind the scenes, and you become either a verified account that's raising funds that GoFundMe has put their check mark on, or you're not. And so I think if you're looking at doing crowdfunding giving, and you're looking at making a donation, is just making sure you're checking those boxes, right, that it is a certified funded campaign. So I think that's something important to add as well.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate that, Chris. That's very good that the platforms themselves, and we even have to think about it this way, that the platforms now have to go through verification where all they're trying to do is provide an opportunity to get people, money, resources that they can use. And now they're having to go through all this extra effort because ultimately it's being misused. And that's such a shame, right? It's such a shame. And GoFundMe do a fantastic job, absolutely fantastic in terms of verification. But to Chris's point, you have to make sure those checks and balances have passed before contributing, right? They're doing all they can to help you. But if we're not going to use their information, their ability to assess and understand whether or not there's legitimacy, it's our responsibility as donators to think about this, right? Think it through. And we get very, the high pressure tactics we've talked about, Chris, it gets very emotional. And I know it was for you. I know it was completely from the heart. And in some cases, the start of our advice is try and take a step back if you can. And I know it's a lot in some cases, right? Just to take a step back and go through and assess, does this look right? Does this feel right? Is there something else I can do to verify that, what I'm going to provide is actually getting to the people that need it? But Chris, that's got to be an important point, and I know from your story is rings true.
Yeah, most definitely.
And with that, we'll be right back after this quick break. Are you struggling to meet the standard of reasonableness in your cybersecurity efforts?
CIS Secure Suite comes with integrated cybersecurity tools and resources you can use to build a reasonable cyber defense program.
This will help you comply with US state data privacy laws, and it will empower you to demonstrate you've implemented the necessary security measures to avoid liability in the event of a data breach.
Now through November 1st, save up to 20% on a new CIS Secure Suite membership using promo code RCD24.
Make your cyber defense reasonable.
Achieve it with CIS Secure Suite.
Visit www.cisecurity.org/CIS-Secure Suite to learn more. Thank you, and let's jump back into the episode. Let's talk about a little bit of advice. So where you can, to take that step back, want to research before donating. As Chris had mentioned, you want to go through the verification, do the checks of legitimacy. We also can utilize, a Charity Navigator, other websites, the Better Business Bureau, GuideStar to help us understand, is this a legitimate charity in this case? Now, in Chris's element, it was an individual, right? So not an official charity, but someone that was, purporting to do their work the best they could to help. Again, they were trying their best, or at least through this promotion, in order to contribute. But we want to necessarily look and see what we can do for verification. We then try to do that through official channels, right? So as mentioned, versus a link in an email or in a social media post, let's go to the official website, right, for that charity, and we'll provide the funds from there. I think Chris, it helps get another element of legitimacy. Would you agree?
Yeah, most definitely. I think that's a good point. And I think something else I could have done is just ask questions, first starting off with sorry that this has happened, is there anything that I can do outside of donating, money, right? How are your parents, right? And like you said, it's very emotionally charged. So there's some things that we don't, think about in the moment. But just seeing, definitely if it's a single individual, right, raising money, right, and it's going to be going directly to them to buy those goods for those people that maybe not have a house anymore, like so many people in Western North Carolina. But it's just to take this, like you said, take the step back, ask a question, see how these people respond. It's something that I could have done, right? And I think that it could have been avoided if I would have taken that step back.
Yeah. And it's not easy. Believe me, there is no one that is infallible, nor me, nor anyone in this organization that can't look at something and have an emotional attachment and not be able to, move beyond kind of, we're trying to apply a logical approach in emotions of, those that matter necessarily for trying to provide support. Again, as mentioned, emotionally charged, very, very difficult, but we'll try, these are elements that we want to try and share so that we can prevent, we want to make sure that donation, that charity, that giving gets to the right people versus being included, in certain activities that we've seen. And the other element that we'll also advise on is transparency. So we want to look necessary at legitimacy, clear information about the distribution of donations, the physical address, phone number, all adding, certain metadata, I'll call it, in terms of a legitimate organization. And ultimately, some best cyber practices, making sure that the website is HTTPS versus HTTP, that again, through secure, certificate managed SSL in that respect. Looking for that is another element. It's not a guarantee. None of these are guaranteed. These are to be used in concert with one another. And in some cases, we see the scams that come through. And, I mentioned the gift card. I've seen this numerous times coming from charitable organizations where a lead of that organization, it's an impersonation email, reaching out to individuals and asking, we need gift cards, we need to do this, I need this, cash deposited, or I need cash given to, a certain location, send it to this address, and things like that. And it's hard to see it happen because, when you talk to the person, and it's the realization effect, I think, Chris, hindsight, we're always going to get it right. But in the moment, as you've mentioned, we want to be cautious of those urgent requests. Real charities, but in some cases, though, even real charities will be looking for respective donations in an immediate respectful of time, to be honest, because there are certain situations that require resources to help as quickly as possible. But I think, Chris, that's always one where we see these urgent requests. We try and take that sense of urgency away, try and take that step back before you click. It is going to be an important consideration, right?
Yeah. Totally agree. And I mean, just to add a little bit, I think, from my personal story, and something I could have done different too. If it's an individual or somebody that's, pretending that they're or an organization online. So my idea was that I was going to not follow like by click and follow this individual, because I already thought I was a follower. But once I found out that they were a scammer, was to watch their account over the next couple of days and watch their replies, and see if I could help any other individuals, right, that were going to fall into this. And what ended up happening was, believe it or not, they ended up messaging me a few days later, and all they asked was, "Hey, how are you?" And I knew right then and there that what they were trying to do was re-engage in conversation, me to ask, hope all is well. Is there anything I can do? Maybe get a little more out of me, right? But in that moment, right, I was upset. And so a couple of days later, it was still in my heart, still in my mind, heart. And I just replied back, "You are a scammer." And immediately they blocked me. So unfortunately, what I should have done, instead of watching their account over the next couple of days and trying to be Superman or whatever, right, and help other people that might fall victim to this like I did, was just to go ahead and report that account, right, to whatever social media account or social media app it is. At this time it was X. So what I could have done was I could have reported the account, and they have a scam drop down that you can click as well if they're impersonating somebody or something or someone. So I should have done that right from the get go, and that would probably have been the best course of action.
Yeah. I mean, always reporting it to the platform is going to be very, very important. I would think also the platforms may be exhausted from all of the requests they get, Chris, because this is just, it's just duplicative. Will create new accounts. Even you say the repeat attack in terms of then trying to say, oh, is there more source of funds here over a few days is another tactic. And it's just an interesting approach of social engineering that is used in order to, one, not only compound upon the scam necessarily, but then to engage secondarily as another opportunity is, again, just another tactic in the space. And, if you weren't aware of the time, I'm sure they would have, asked you questions. We're really trying to meet this goal of 10,000, 15,000, whatever it happens to be. We really appreciate your support. If there's anything else you could do, we truly appreciate. And again, it's this continuation, which is a shame. But again, it's part of their tactics, and just another thing we have to be aware of. Definitely. Now, Chris, one of the things that I want to leave the viewers, an audience in the last few minutes is what to do, if you've been scammed in this space. And, I think there's reporting fraudulent charges, to respective financial institutions, filing reports are going to be important with the FTC, maybe local authorities. Even like you said, the actual account that it was impersonating had reached out to you to try and warn you. In some cases, those charities may not know, right? I can only imagine what the charities have to do and probably have people in play to help report scam and impersonations of their respective institutions. And then, ultimately, if you believe that there were any exchange of financial data or respectfully your account or sensitive information stolen, that credit freeze is always an option, just to help mitigate any risk in that space. But anything from your side, Chris?
No, I think the only thing that just to add is I think what you said there though is reporting to the platform, also maybe going in like mine was through PayPal, right? Which I could file that with PayPal as well, and then hopefully maybe that would get his X account banned or suspended. And then also, having PayPal looking into the issue as well. So it'd be coming from two different fronts there for them. So yeah, I don't think I have really anything to add there other than, maybe those additional thoughts.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, Chris, we'll conclude the episode, but I want to thank you, one, for your honesty, bringing this to everyone's awareness as a campaign that we'll continue to do not only through post-disaster, but also through the holiday season and others. We appreciate you, coming on board, providing such an important message and your thoughts and advice and what to do. So we really appreciate it, Chris. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah.
And to our audience, thank you. We really appreciate your time, consideration, and listening to the podcast. Any questions, comments, concerns, podcast@cisecurity.org. And to hear episodes like this and much, much more, join us every Wednesday as we release new episodes. And with that, we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to the podcast today.
The thoughts and opinions expressed by our podcast guests are solely theirs and do not necessarily reflect those of CIS.
Tune in on Wednesdays for a new episode. And in the meantime, visit our website at cisecurity.org.
Together, we'll continue our efforts of creating confidence in the connected world.